I'm not sure. Cause it said, can you see the comments? It says, can Sadia see our questions?
Yes, Sadia can see your questions, so
Yes,
feel free
yes,
to
she can
ask
see.
anything.
Yeah, she can see.
Yay.
So
Okay.
yeah, we should be able to see each other's. I think just to
Yay.
us, it just looks
Okay.
awkward, you
Okay,
know.
fine. No worries. Okay, I'm gonna let you lead. I'm gonna let you lead.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be talking to you. Um,
You-
and what made me hit you up was I saw you on I saw a clip actually here on TikTok
Just
on Just
panicking?
Pearly Things. Yes,
Mm.
Just Pearly Things. I saw the little engagement y'all had, and I listened to you explain about the red pill and how men are like red pill are like men male feminists. So
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I understand that take. I definitely understand that analysis, and I wanted to you to elaborate on it because I know you have a background in psychology, and I know
Yeah.
you can competently and accurately give a good assessment and analysis of how you came to that conclusion based on your own observations. So I think that's important because one of the things that I critique as well, especially with the red pill, that I try not
Yeah.
to get caught up in it because I tell people all the time, of course, red pill content creators gravitate towards me because I hold women accountable. But
Me
I
too.
am I am a scientist first and foremost.
Yeah.
Psychology is what I study, and at the end of the day, remaining true to the studies and the research is what we aim to do in order to
Yeah.
better people's lives.
Hmm.
So I thought, what better way, who better to speak to than another psychologist who can
Yay.
actually provide an
Yeah.
in-depth analysis of why they said
Inshallah,
they're like
God
angry
willing, yeah,
feminists.
yeah. I'm like you. I think what happened when I first joined social media, I'd always been anti-feminist, and so when I first joined social media, I was talking a lot about how hoe phase is not it's not something appropriate for us psychologically. It's very damaging. I spoke a little bit about how being like men is not actually conducive, so on and so forth. And I was just thinking out loud, and I attracted all these followers, and I was really excited at first. I was like, I had all these male followers who was just like, thank you so much for speaking out loud and saying what we've been trying to say. And I was so proud to hold the pillar for men. I was like, oh yeah, I'm so happy to give you a voice. But what I found is the moment I would do a neutral video or a video that was actually more about just, what men need to do to also make a happy home, they would turn on me and they would be so critical and so degrading and all of these things. They're like, oh, you're just a woman and I bet your body counts like this. And I was like, huh? Where is this coming from? I didn't know that they had this side to them. And it was very reminiscent of the exact kind of comments I would get from the blue-haired lesbian, blue-haired feminist. Sorry, I meant to
Mm-hmm.
say feminist. Blue-haired feminist. And people always say, oh, the blue-haired feminists, nobody likes them and they're just girls that can't get guys and so they're so bitter. But I found the exact same traits in the red pill community. They were the men that had fake profiles who clearly had been rejected so much by women that they built up a hatred towards them to minimize the pain that's received when we are rejected. And I just saw that so many similarities between them that they're actually a perfect match for each other. If you take a feminist and you take a hardcore red pill man, they're actually a perfect match for each other because they equally dislike the opposite gender, and it stems from a place of rejection. So I would say they're actually very, very compatible. And so that's where I started now getting really against the red pill kind of community. And when I went on Just Pearly Things, I had no intention to argue with her or anything. But what I found very difficult with that conversation is she was so adamant that to teach her to have conversations that had no purpose. So the conversation would be things like, "Oh, men can survive without women. If we were in a desert island and there was no survival and there was no water, nothing, men would survive longer." And I just thought to myself, what am I gaining from listening to that? What is that doing for me? And it isn't doing anything constructive for me. I don't know how that would be constructive for men. So that's where the altercation started.
Okay, okay, I see, I understand. So,
Yeah.
so with that being said, my understanding of that, because I have too said that, but I've said that in response to women who act like they're superior to men. So
Right.
when women when their approach is, okay, we don't really need men, men are trash, men are just, they just say all these
Negative.
misandrous things. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, everything you have was created by a man. It was innovated, it was designed, it was brought
Yeah.
forth by a man, the hands of a man. So
Mm-hmm.
how can you say that men are
Yeah.
XYZ,
Yeah.
and without men, you wouldn't have the things that you have? I think you should
Yeah.
have a little bit more reverence for what it is that men have brought to this earth and what they've done to construct society. So a lot
Mm.
of times, I think with just Pearly things, it's not a knock against her. I don't watch her, but I
Yeah.
think it's just another one of those clout chasing things to where she heard
Yeah.
certain things from certain guys and she just wants to emulate that and get clout off that, whereas
Yeah.
opposed to you're actually trying to resolve the issues, this tension between men and women that we're currently experiencing in Western dating culture. Because as I've said, what it is now is women have been indoctrinated by feminist values and they perceive men as the enemy. And
Mm.
anytime you approach it from this is an antagonistic perspective, or I see this individual as somebody who's they've oppressed me. They're out to make me feel inferior in ways that I don't appreciate. And that permeates in the relationship. It
Yeah.
ruins the foundation of the relationship. And a lot
That's,
of times, even when I'm working with my clients, that's what I try to get them to understand and say, okay, well, what's the first thing? Do you perceive this man to be your enemy? Do you
yeah.
take offense to everything he says? Because at the end of the day, relationships are going to have constructive criticism. You guys
Mm.
are going to have differences that are natural, that he might not be able to empathize with you. You might not be able to empathize with him on certain things. There's going to be an empathy gap.
Yeah.
And you have to accept those natural differences that are predicated on biological differences and seek to understand and intertwine that in a way that's healthy. So
But
that's what I try to
the
explain.
differences are designed to fill in the gaps. That's what why as men and women when they come together, it's a beautiful synergy. Of course we fight and of course we hate each other at times, but it's designed to create a whole human being. And when we have children, they require the gaps from one is filled by the other, and it's actually an essential codependency. Men and women need each other, and it's a strange world where it's like boys versus girls. It's like being in high school again. And what I find a bit difficult when I'm conversing with red pill or feminists is both of them, they are so indoctrinated by the narrative that when you're trying to talk to them, they don't actually, they're very predictable. So I can ask a red pill, I know exactly what he's going to say about marriage. He's going to say that it's a con and it leaves men broke and it's a scam. And if I speak to a feminist, I know she's going to say it's a part of the patriarchy, so men own women. And I don't, it's not interesting to me. If I'm going to listen to a red pill speaker and I can predict what you're going to say after every question, you no longer are combining your life experiences with what you're thinking. So you are no longer interesting. I can ask a red pill about what do you think about body count? And I know he's going to say, oh, she's a slut, and this, that, and the other. And I can talk to a feminist and I know she's going to say, my body, my choice. I can ask them about abortion. I know exactly what you're going to say. And that makes you lose everything that makes you unique and everything that makes you interesting. Whereas if you ask people like us, what do you think about this? We'll probably have a different take on each thing. We're not as predictable because we combine psychology, our own experiences, and what we believe. Whereas when you speak to red pill or feminists, very boring to talk to.
Yep, I agree. And I think one of the advantages that I have, and I also try to incorporate this into my clientele and what I talk about as well. I haven't had the average experience of the average man. I'm well aware that the average man does not is not desirable to women.
Mm.
I've never really had that issue. I've always
Yeah,
been the guy. I've always been the popular guy without
yeah,
even trying to be. You know, it's
yeah,
just certain types of people that people gravitate towards. Like
yeah,
when I play basketball with my bros and when I go to the gym, there's just so much respect for me. The way I
yeah.
talk to
Crazy
women and
people.
vibe with women is
Yeah,
really easy. So I try to
yeah,
I let guys know that there's a balance that you can walk. There's a way to
yeah,
maintain masculine frame, and there's a way to still have certain levels of charisma and
yeah.
edge and be humorous and still show in essence an emotional side, not whereas it turns off a woman, but to the point you shouldn't be scared to show a woman that you care.
Yeah,
You
of
shouldn't be
course.
scared. She shouldn't be questioning if you care.
And I think that's a really important point. I think the reason why both of us are quite balanced is we haven't really faced rejection. Praise be to God, like not in a bragging way. I've never struggled with men. I've never struggled in any way, shape, or form, in a friendship way or in a romantic sense or in work sense or anything like that. Men have always been quite kind to me. And I've always kind of attracted male energy in my life, whether it's friends or whether even if I'm going to, I don't know, if my car gets stopped, I know within 2 seconds a man will come and help me. Or if I'm I'm struggling with luggage, I know in a minute somebody will come and help me, a man will come and help me. So I've always had that positive kind of reaction from men. And so because we both don't struggle with the opposite gender, we can't really see why they hate each other, because I haven't experienced that. So maybe we're biased. Maybe we've got such a positive view or a balanced view because we do get the upper end of it. But the reality is, if you don't have that, you can work on things that make you more desirable to the
Mm-hmm.
opposite sex. Instead of disliking the opposite sex, work on the traits that make you unlikable to them, and you can create that same magnetism.
Right. And for
Mm.
me, it's really surgical because I get a lot of hate comments. Like I said, my platform has been my platform is more so about addressing misinformation,
Mm.
fallacies regarding human behavior. And in this Western dating climate, a lot of women are complaining about the men. So when I see women complain about the men, my natural remedy for that is to make them do some introspective assessment and have some
Mm.
accountability on their end about what they do wrong or how shitty their selectivity may be that's
Yeah.
actually resulting in the undesirable outcomes that they're experiencing.
Mm.
So a lot of times, oh, you're misogynistic, you're sexist, this, that, and the third. And it's like, actually, I'm speaking very intricately to a specific cohort of women who tend to have this uncanny habit of getting online and complaining about men. I'm
Yeah.
speaking to them. I don't
Yeah.
see men do it as often. Men aren't the
Mm.
ones who are making these posts about, women this, women that, women this, women that, unless you go into the red pill spaces.
Yeah.
But in general, I
In
typically
general, you
see
don't find.
women. Yeah,
Yeah, and I'll also say that, like, even when I'm trying to post something positive about men, or being like a gushing kind of girlfriend and say something nice about men, trying to find a post about how you can find a lovely man, you won't find a meme that says something like that. Whereas you'll find millions of memes saying, when you've got a beautiful woman, make sure you cherish her, or some women are once in a lifetime kind of women, you can't replace them. You could find endless kind of posts and repost that. If you try and look for one about men and how great men are, or how great the man in your life is, you'll struggle. You won't find it. So there is a culture, but for me, I see it as the devil's work. It's very much there's a lot of money to be made from single people and depressed people. There's a lot of money to be made, so it works in the favor of big corporations and everything like that to destroy the family. But the reality is, in terms of your mental health, you will never be happy when you can't find the person that is able to soothe you. And partnerships are the best way to soothe your anxiety.
I agree. I agree. I definitely agree. So, but why do you think? Why do you think? We hinted or we spoke on the fact that it's rejection, but what exactly do you think it is in terms of like its overall detriment to men? Because I was reading an article where they looked at basically the topics that the red pill space discussed, and actually, I want to say life improvement, status improvement, those things of that nature were the most talked about topics. So, do you think there is still an element that is beneficial based on the fact that they still talk about self improvement more than anything
Yeah,
else?
it definitely has room. It's not that it doesn't have room. So it definitely has room, because the reality is that there is an epidemic where women aren't being feminine anymore, and they're really not looking after men. And simple things like cooking are seen as so degrading, but it's how men feel loved. I don't make the rules. Men feel loved when you cook and clean for them. This is not something archaic. There's nothing wrong with embracing that, because that's how they feel loved, just like we feel loved when a man looks after us financially. That doesn't make us losers. It doesn't make us dependent. It's just how we're designed. We're designed to be looked after because it's evolved. We
Right,
were just hunter-gatherer times. We needed a man that would invest in us. Men were designed to go hunt animals and come home to a home-cooked meal because they would go out and risk their lives. And that desire has never gone. You can't outthink biology. You can't outsmart biology. It's still in both of us. And so I think the fact that men aren't experiencing that, but they still have the exact same pressure to provide, but none of the expectation to receive nurture, is a slow suicide for men. It really is a slow suicide. When you marry a woman where you are always going to be expected to be the provider, whether you like it or not, even if you go 50-50, if she gets pregnant, you are the provider. Every child means you work harder, it means she works less. That's just how our bodies are designed. So as a man, you can never not have the pressure to provide, but you will never have the audacity now to expect a home cooked meal, a house cleaned, and you to be getting a massage. You can't even expect that. And most men hate their jobs. You've got to remember, most men hate their jobs. They're sat behind a desk or they sat in a car hours on end providing for a woman with no return on that investment. So I definitely understand that there is a cry for help, and I definitely understand why the men turn to the red pill community.
Exactly. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's more so. That's definitely what I wanted to get your opinion on with
Mm-hmm.
regards to that, because I do think that overall there and it makes them better men if they improve
Yeah.
their life, if they improve their lives, if they improve their status, if they improve their finances. That's good. I mean, that helps the stressors all together. That helps mitigate those stressors all
Mm-hmm.
together, all across the board. But it's the animus towards the women that rejected them prior to that. And I try to tell them, see, I'm one of
Yeah.
these guys that understands women are going to reject you if you don't qualify. If they're turned off by something, that's just the
Yeah.
natural state of
Women
women.
reject you when you don't fulfill your potential. When you've got
Yeah.
potential that could be fulfilled, you're not tapping into it. Women reject you. So that could be your body. You've got a great shape. You might, because most men have, if they work out, they can almost create the body. It's not easy getting a six. I'm not saying get a six pack, but most men can get a body that it's they can sculpt it. And when they've got the potential for it, but they've chosen not to, women automatically reduce your pool. Or when you have more earning potential but you don't choose to do it, or when you spend time on video games and pornography, that's all your potential being wasted. There's no return on those kind of investments. So that's all your potential being wasted, and it automatically puts a woman off. And whereas if you fulfill your potential, like the red pill tells you to, like to go out and do this, what you'll find is women naturally treat you better, and so your hatred for women should go down.
Yep, I agree.
Mm.
I agree. And
Mm.
that's what I was on a podcast. I was on a pretty big podcast back in Atlanta back earlier this year in February, and I told them, they were asking me about the red pill, and I said the goal is to understand female nature and female selective pressures, but not hold it over their head if you don't meet those qualifications off rip. And that's where a lot of men go wrong. That's where they get caught up. They hold it over their head. Oh, I'm not 6 foot. Oh, I don't have X amount of money. Or I don't have this body. And they make women the perpetrators, when it's in reality it's like, okay,
It's
you can
not
alter a
us.
couple of these things, you can't
Yeah.
hold it over her head because she wants the
Yeah.
best for her.
Unfortunately, we don't make the rules. Like us girls, we don't make the rules. Similarly, you guys are attracted to big boobs, big hips. You're naturally attracted to that. Even if you like a slender frame, a lot of men love a slim girl, but they'll still like a waist to hip ratio. They'll still like some element of boobs because it's biology. It
Yep.
signals you're being able to feed my kids. You can bear children. You're not a child. That's what it signals. And so you can't get mad at men for those preferences. You can't get mad at them. It's how they decide. Similarly, when a woman wants you to look after her, it's not you can't really get mad at her because it leads to her submitting to you. You get a better deal out of it. Similarly, if I take care of my body and I take care of my appearance, I'll get a better version of that man. He will court me better. He will take me out more. He will do more for me when he's attracted to me. Similarly, when you look after a woman, she will become a better version of her as well. So it's just how we're designed, unfortunately. It's not something to get mad at.
Can't they we listen, we can't help it, because I say all the time, it's human nature
Mm.
to like or dislike anything that is not beneficial or advantageous to us, both
Yeah.
men and women. I mean, that's why cognitive biases exist. We focus
Yeah.
on everything that's in our favor and we approve of those things, but the minute our beliefs are challenged and it's something that we
Mhm.
dislike and we want to reject, the cognitive dissonance sets in, and then
Mhm.
it's the world's fault, it's not our
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
And I try to
But
preach against
amongst
that.
the red pill community, especially the young ones that haven't faced that much trauma from women, why do you think they gravitate towards it? Because one thing I have found is that there's boys out there that actually have been okay with women, but for some reason they've turned into red pill. I don't know if it's just because they're young and want to be like Andrew Tate, or if it's like, what do you think it is? Because
Well,
I think
I
infiltrating.
think there's a role model element to it.
Yeah.
They get yes, they still get to see that primitive um exhibition of masculinity,
Mhm.
especially what they would. like align with what it means to be masculine in their heads. It's the action figure guy. It's the
Right.
superhero. It's
Right.
it's it's that emulation that they identify with, and they think, okay, I may have a life where I get girls, or I may have a life that's fulfilled, or I may come from a good background, but at the end of the day, there's also an entertainment element to it. This is
Right.
entertainment. This allows me to
He is
feel like,
entertaining. Yeah, I would give him
yes,
that.
yes, it
He's
is
not boring. He's
the
definitely.
entertainment element is
It feels like
underrated.
watching a reality TV show. It feels like watching a reality TV show when you watch him on. So, and that is an admirable trait, because charisma isn't for everyone. Not everybody has charisma. So I can get why he's got a huge appeal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. See, like I come from a really really balanced background. My mom is married. She's been married for 15 years. My grandparents have been married for 55 years, and
Oh,
we have a very very tight knit family. Like when we have holidays and stuff like that, we're all together. My mom, her brother, their kids, my first cousins, we're always all together. So
mhm.
I got to see that growing up, and I actually got to see what it means to be good men. Like my grandfather served 23 years in the Air Force and then on the police force, and my uncle's a judge. So I get to see these men in their masculine frame, but also show emotion, also be balanced, also like love their kids, teach their kids. And of course, a man's love is different from a woman's love. They're the disciplinarians. It's the tough love, those
Yeah.
things. But you learn as you grow up, you learn how to utilize that balance to your advantage and incorporate that into your own romantic relationships. And I
Yeah.
think that's what most young kids, especially now in America, a lot of them are missing, especially with the increase in single motherhood rates, especially in the Black American community, where 75% of kids are have single mother households, which is
Yeah.
one of the most prevalent problems in Black America currently that I also speak out against.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons I find it difficult, is because I'm from a community where that's just not common. I'm from Pakistan and we're Muslim, and the idea of divorce just doesn't really exist. And the idea of single parenting, it's now creeping in, but when we were growing up, it wasn't a thing. It just wasn't a possibility. You just don't get divorced. So I didn't really understand the brokenness that can occur when you have those types of cultures where it's common. And what it does is it leaves people looking for role models. And so what these big characters online do is they tap into the vulnerable. When you're given love and esteem at home, you can formulate your own opinions, but when you're not, you're searching. And unfortunately, in the wrong hands, you can get the wrong impression. And I think some of the things that I've noticed now, I have female clients that will come to me and say, "Oh, I'm turning 28. Does that mean I've got no value anymore?" Or, "Oh, is my husband is saying that part of being high value means he has to have lots of women. Should I just let him?" And it's like they're confused. Some of Andrew's messages, I always ask myself, if I listen to this person, would the children of the household feel better? If my mum listened to Andrew Tate and my dad listened to Andrew Tate, would my children be better off? And I don't know, because with Andrew, he really does promote a lot of promiscuity, like lots of women and this, that, and the other. Do children benefit from this message? And I think if I was to give one piece of advice to people when they're listening to an influencer or listening to anyone, does that message lead to a better outcome for children? Forget you. You can have a million women, or
Mhm.
forget you as a woman. You can be this independent career woman, a boss bitch. Will that lead to happier children? If the answer is no, turn that person off. If the answer is yes, dive into that, lean into that person, because children are the only thing that should matter when you're trying to absorb information.
I agree. I agree as well. Also, another thing is we have to understand the nuance when we say things like, "Oh, a woman's value decreases with age." When I
Mm.
say things like that, or I'm explaining things like that, I'm strictly talking about in terms of evolutionary
Yeah,
psychology,
yeah.
as if I'm lecturing a
But I also
course.
do agree with that, because I do think as you age as a woman, if you keep the same standards, you're going to miss out. So when you turn 30 onwards, you have to accept that your partner's going to have children and you might be a stepmother, or you have to accept that, or at least be open to that. And after 35, you should also be open to the idea of he might need potential children from somewhere else. It's not something to be ashamed of. Your choices have to reflect your age. Doesn't mean you're not valuable, but you have to adapt. You can't be 35 and saying I want someone with no kids, I want someone with no this, because you saying I want someone with no kids after 35, you're potentially preventing him from becoming a father. Whereas if he has kids, you guys have kids, it's a bonus to both of your lives. But you have to adapt your standards.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's what and I think that's where the my value has reduced, because when they say value, they're talking about relative to their desires. So
Yeah.
what can you get, or what do you desire at the age that you are?
Yeah.
So if I'm an older woman, I might not have the amount of sexual market value that I had at 20 to demand this type of guy with this
Yeah.
type of lifestyle. That's just
Yeah.
something that naturally occurs
And
that
it's
you have to
not a
be willing
bad
to
thing.
accept.
It's not a bad thing as long as you adapt your criteria. You
Yeah.
can still get everything you want as long as what you want changes with the age. That's all. Yeah, you can get everything you want. You can get a rich man, but you'll have to say he might be older, he might have kids. And you can get a handsome man, but you might say, okay, he might again be older with kids, he might be divorced. You can't expect zero, you can't expect no compromise as you get older. Yeah, it's just life. It's how things are. But of course, there are some benefits of getting older as well. I know we talk a lot about young women, but we know that young mums is one of the causes of high imprisonment, low academic achievement. Children tend to more likelihood of divorce and separation. So there needs to be a balance. Of course, being a young mum is great, but there's some challenges with that as well. So just bearing in mind the balance of everything.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Amazing. And in terms of the audience, do you guys have any questions about the red pill and the feminism like take on things? Are you guys, what would you guys classify yourselves as? I wonder what is mostly your audience? Is it, would you say it's more red pill?
I no, I think it's both of ours. I think it's both
Right.
of ours. But a lot of
Yeah.
my audience, yeah, a lot of my audience does align with the red pill, and you know, I it's one of those. It's an enigma to me, because
Oh.
they hop on what they want to hop on as long as it's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
The
Exactly.
moment you say I went through your comment section, and I see the moment you went against the red pill, there was a whole bunch of women, yeah, this, that, da, 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 da,
Yeah,
da.
and
You know,
it's so funny. The same people that will repost me and say, "Follow this woman, she's amazing." You have the very same people will be like, "You don't know what you're talking about. You're a woman. We don't take
yep,
advice from a woman." The moment I said something a bit controversial the other day when I was talking about how why men like entitled women. I don't think it's a conscious process. I don't think they actively think I want an entitled woman, but because of that evolution, like whenever they invest in something, remember back in the day, evolutionary days, when investment meant risking your lives in severe weather conditions, animals, and you go bring the food back to a woman. If she now says, bye, I'm going to go meet another guy, you're like, no, you're not. I just risked my life for you. Stay home.
right.
But that is still in men. When the moment they invest in a woman, they naturally want to see more progress with that woman. When a woman hasn't cost them a thing, hasn't spent anything of theirs, hasn't been anything, as much as they love that trait, they don't fight for it the same way because they're logical. They know that on the balance sheet, there's no cost. Whereas with a woman that's expensive, the balance sheet means I need a return on this investment. So they didn't like that, but it's the psychology behind investment. Similarly to women, when they've invested good years, say if they've spent their 20s with a man who might be awful, in and out of jail, but because she's invested time, for us it's time, for
She
you
wants to
guys
stay
it's
with them.
money. For us, it's time, as because our eggs deplete with time, and for you guys, your resources deplete with money. So when you guys invest money, you want to see it through. When with us, if we've spent our 20s with a man and he's taken our best egg years, we want to see it through. Whereas in our 30s, as you get older, what will happen is you think, oh, my eggs are small anyway. It doesn't matter. You're less likely to worry. But with your 20s, they're at their best quality. Whoever you date in your 20s will probably get the most amount of time out of you and most commitment out of you.
And
It's
most
just
people, and
biology.
I'm glad you hinted on that, because most people don't understand the cost of investment, especially in the context of romantic relationships. They don't understand, why didn't she just leave? Why didn't he just leave? Well, that man invested X amount of resources. He's done nothing but allocate resources to this woman throughout the stint of their relationship, and all that comes. You know, that's love. That's in the form of love. It's not
That's
just easy
how.
for him to just turn
It's
that
a
off,
cost.
and yeah,
Yeah.
and the
It's
same thing emotionally with
yeah.
a woman. in a relationship
Time.
with a man.
Ours is time. Yeah, ours is time and sacrificing alternatives. Alternative men that could have invested in us and we could have had kids with. And time is our two ways of showing investment. For men, it's their resources. And so, unfortunately, that woman that asks for nothing, a man's nature is to take his foot off the pedal because survival without investment is the ultimate strategy for a man. That's the best thing he could ever ask for. So they always look back and be like, oh, that wonderful girl that didn't ask for anything. Why didn't I do more for her? And this bitch got the best out of me. It's because biologically, when someone doesn't ask, she doesn't get. It's just unfortunate. So unfortunately, I don't like it, but girls that ask for nothing and don't expect anything, they don't actually get the best deal. And if you speak to women who ask for nothing, they'll tell you I got nothing from men. But if you speak to gold diggers, they will tell you they started a business because of a man. They'll tell you they got a brand new Lexus, a new car. They'll tell you my kids have this much child support every year, every month because of a man. Because they did what they were designed to do, which is get the resources,
Yep.
unfortunately.
And
Yeah.
it's just instinct. It's just instinct. You talking about
It is,
three
and
hundred thousand
that's
years.
why women that come from poor backgrounds, they're more likely to be gold diggers because they're in instinctive mode. They're in survival mode. When you come from a poor background, you're more in survival mode, so they're the best gold diggers. Whereas if you meet a woman who's comfortable background, she's unlikely to be a gold digger because she's not in survival mode, but she'll be disappointed that she doesn't get anything, but she's not in survival mode. She doesn't know how to do that tactic. So that's why they end up, the girls from the worst backgrounds end up marrying, the athlete and this, that, and they'll say, I can't believe I lived this life, but it's because they were in survival mode.
Yep, I tell people if you could turn up the environmental pressures that we experience in ancestors back in the hunter
Yeah.
gatherer societies, then you would see the traits that we frown upon now
Yeah.
exemplified to the max.
They come out.
Yep.
Yeah, they just do.
And
They
you
come.
see the same thing. Like if you go to, I mean, there are still hunter gatherer societies like in South America, and some in Africa. If you still go to these, you'll still see those traits exemplified. You'll still see those behaviors demonstrated.
But where in my culture in Pakistan, it's very clear that you would marry for money, and if you didn't marry for money, you can starve. You can literally starve to death. Your kids will literally go to school in 50 degrees heat outside without a roof. And why wouldn't you marry to get survival? Why wouldn't you do that? It makes total sense. It's only in the West where it's seen as so negatively, but the reality is it's instinctive. It doesn't mean you marry solely for. We've got the luxury in the West where you don't have to marry for survival. But the reality is, if you marry for survival plus connection, if you get both of those, like men get the nurture and all the other things that they like, and women get the investment and all the other things they like, we're in the luxury position where we can ask for both. But the majority of the world just asks for survival when they get married.
Transactional relationships.
It's life.
The nature of
It's life.
relationships
The
is
concept of
symbiosis.
love, the concept of marrying for love is so recent. Throughout history, it's
Yep.
never happened. People would marry their brother and sisters to keep the money in the family.
Right.
So the concept of marrying for desire and for love and novelty and all this thing is a very recent thing. We haven't evolved. Our bodies haven't caught up with it. So that's why it doesn't always work. But marrying transactionally has worked throughout the years. It's worked throughout centuries.
It's been the most effective method. Most effective and most efficient.
You can't fight it, unfortunately.
Yep.
I really have to apologize because I actually do have to get going. I thought I'd start at 10 and finish at 11, but my stupid Insta Live didn't work. But I do want to do an Insta Live. Is there a way of me fixing it somehow? I can try to fix it.
Listen, I have no idea what it is
Me
going
neither.
on with the device. I did some research and they said something about you need a VPN, but I'm going to double check. I'm going to double check so we can.
And we can do question and answers as well, guys. If you ever want any kind of advice or anything like that, it would be a great way to interact. I've never done a live before. Have you done lives before?
Yes, I do. I do lives quite often.
They're nice, right? They're actually quite nice. It's a nice way to talk to people. I thought, they might get bored of us and stuff, but you guys are lovely. You guys are so engaged and stuff. So I would love to do another one whenever you can.
Okay.
And we'll try to arrange again. I'm so sorry about today. I feel like I wasted a lot of your time, and I really do apologize.
No problem. It's no
problem. Okay, lovely. We'll be in touch.
All right.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Have a lovely day. Take care.
Guys, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.
Bye.